Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this new edition of Viewpoint on DBS Television. In tonight's edition, we want to talk economic issues, especially with the outbreak of COVID-19 pandemic in Cameroon. To talk to us, we have an economist who will talk to us about the impact of the pandemic to the economic life of Cameroon, and a teacher. All of them are here in the studio. Good evening, Mr. Akuma, and thank you for accepting our invitation.
Good evening, Mr. Venatius. It's a pleasure to be here again and to talk about a pertinent topic such as COVID-19, which have created a lot of havoc in our daily lives and in the lives of most countries in the world. So it's a pleasure being here again today, and I want to say good evening to all our viewers all over the 10 regions of Cameroon.
It is our pleasure to having you once. You know, it has been some time since you were with us in our studio. Mr. Akum is being accompanied by Mr. Kum Jerome. Mr. Kum is a teacher. Good evening, sir. Thank you for being there.
Good evening, Mr. Venatius. Good evening, televiewers. It's always a pleasure to answer present on your program in order to share our viewpoints on pertinent issues concerning the economy, which is, the backbone of every society, and especially in a period of the pandemic and so many other crises that are hitting Cameroon hard.
Actually, and we must indicate that it has been some time, about some 2 or 3 months since you were last here.
Yeah. We were lastly, I think, in March.
It's our pleasure having you back.
The pleasure is shared.
Let us go straight to part 1 of the program, the yes and no answer session. We begin with question 1. Mr. Akuma, I begin with you. We're talking about the COVID-19 pandemic in Cameroon. Is it an economic blessing to Cameroon?
I would say yes, to a certain extent.
Yes, to a certain extent. Mr. Kum, is it?
A capital no.
Mr. Kum thinks no, it is not. Mr. Kum, I remain with you. Are there potentials to relaunch the economy post-COVID-19 period?
Yes, I think there are a lot of potentials.
There are a lot of potentials. Mr. Akum?
Yes, there are.
Okay, Mr. Akum shares the same opinion. Let us go to part 2 of the program to hear them talk to us. If you are just joining us, you are watching a Viewpoint on DBS Television, and we are also going live on our Facebook page. If there is a sector in Cameroon hard hit by the COVID-19 pandemic, then it is the economic sector in the country. Just like in other countries the world over, where the pandemic took every other person unawares, and experience is showing that the economic sector is suffering more than other sectors. In tonight's edition of the program, we are asking the question, is it a blessing to the economy of Cameroon? Is this COVID-19 pandemic an economic blessing to Cameroon? Mr. Akum, you think yes, it is to a certain extent. Let's begin with that positive aspect. Yes, it is a blessing to the economy of Cameroon.
First of all, I want to say that this pandemic, COVID-19, is one in which has touched a lot of economies in the world. And it has created a lot of misery, a lot of havoc. But with the viewpoint of economists, we always, within a line of misery, we always try to find out some optimistic, some positive aspects. If we look at it, COVID-19 has been of great disaster. Mm-hmm. But if we take the case of Cameroon, like we see around, there are some potential benefits that we have reaped from COVID-19.
Benefits?
Benefits.
Yes.
We cannot completely deny that there haven't been any benefits that we have seen around.
Mm-hmm.
I will start by looking at it in the point of the sanitation and hygiene level. After the outbreak, we realized that most people became aware of the level of sanitation and hygiene.
Mm-hmm.
If you go to our communities, to our villages, you will see that there is an improvement in the level of hygiene.
Mm-hmm.
Parents, even the little kids, know that they have to wash their hands. They know that they have to keep distances. So there is that. COVID-19 has brought that
awareness,
that awareness of hygiene. That is one positive aspect we have gained from this pandemic. The next, looking at it on the context of economy, it has created a new vision in entrepreneurship.
Mm-hmm.
People have a new way of thinking. People have a new way of all the investors, all the stakeholders. They are aware that each and every person needs to prepare a contingency plan.
Mm-hmm.
So this pandemic is just like an eye-opener. So to the economy of Cameroon and its stakeholders, it has brought what we call a lesson learned. So to me, I look at it in a positive aspect that the pandemic has brought a lot of lesson learned,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of awareness, and it has also brought about the aspect of improving some other sectors. We cannot just look at it on one side, that it has hindered trade,
Mm-hmm.
it has hindered education, it has hindered, but there are some sectors that are doing extremely well as a result of COVID-19.
Mm-hmm.
You will bear with me.
Mr. Akum, I think that when we were talking about the economic sector, this is one of the sectors that when the pandemic began, most companies, went through this idea of laying off
Their
staff.
workers.
Yes.
Yes, it brought unemployment and also create employment.
Okay.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
The pandemic brought unemployment, but there were some sectors that were employing.
Mm-hmm.
You bear with me that the health sector,
Of course.
the
Needed personnel.
telecommunication sector, because people now, the major means of communication was
Online.
Through online.
Mm-hmm.
So you realize that the online companies were doing extremely well.
Yes.
Some industrial companies were also doing very well. Those producing buckets, sanitizers,
Face masks.
So it became a gold mine to others. So the pandemic brought gold. It was a gold mine to others, while to others it was a misery. But notwithstanding, I am saying this in the standpoint of an economist, that we cannot deny the fact that COVID-19 has brought some potential benefits.
Mm-hmm.
It has brought up a lot of misery, but along the line, there are some benefits that we have reaped from it. You know, our economy, Cameroon, has gone through some trial moments, and we were even afraid that the pandemic is coming to reduce the labor force we're having.
Mm-hmm.
But we are fortunate that we were not as touched as others.
Mm-hmm.
But I want to say also that this pandemic has also opened the minds of many Cameroonians. Many Cameroonians today are preparing for more worse situations.
Mm-hmm.
So if the pandemic is to come again,
It will not take
it
people
will
by
not take people
surprise like
unaware.
the first one was.
So my standpoint is that COVID-19, to an extent, has prepared Cameroonians.
And it is a blessing for the economy of
Yes.
Cameroon. Okay, let's take the contrary view. Mr. Kum thinks that the pandemic in itself is not a blessing to Cameroon. Mr. Kum?
Yes, Mr. Van Nashus, thank you very much for this. When we underline the keyword there, blessing, something favorable, that is like bringing joy, peace to Cameroonians. Looking at it, it is not really. And looking at the economy of Cameroon in its original state, we can't say the COVID-19 pandemic is a blessing. In fact, to me, it is like adding salt into injuries. Before the outbreak of this COVID-19, we had the famous Anglophone crisis and the Boko Haram that was hitting us. And the economy was like limping. So it just came to add some salt to injuries. But why is it not a blessing? It is not a blessing because, one, Cameroon is 70 to 80% consuming country. Most of what we use, even toothpaste, toothpick, yes, they are all imported. And during the COVID-19 period and the multiple shutdowns, most of these things were nowhere to be found. Or their prices were like skyrocketing, they were very high. And what we produce in Cameroon, like some few agricultural products, as I saw on the streets, they became of zero price. You could buy a basket of tomatoes that used to be sold for 8,000 francs at a nothing cost of 1,500 francs, making life miserable for the less privileged people. Talking at the level of international trade, it dropped drastically in Cameroon. Standard of living of Cameroonians reduced. Why? Because many of them were laid off their jobs and some of their wages were reduced. And it brought what? Misery and, deterioration of their condition. So we cannot talk of blessing in this aspect. And then when you talk of financial aid, about 15% of the money of Cameroon is owned from what? Foreign aid. And this pandemic, we all know that it had a great impact on these big countries like USA, UK, Italy, and the rest. So they were focusing on how to arrest this pandemic in their own home country, thereby reducing our own chances of surviving. It is not a blessing at all. Even though one can say it increased the rate of what digital economy.
Mr. Kum, we should not isolate the word, because if we isolate the word blessing, it won't make the real sense of it. Economic blessing. Because blessing. It can be a social, it can be a social curse and an economic blessing.
Yes, but in this sense, it cannot be an economic blessing.
Okay.
What did Cameroonians gain economically as far as the COVID-19 is concerned? They gained nothing. I mean, actually nothing, because the numerous lockdowns, it made life miserable for Cameroonians. One, Cameroonians are living below what? The poverty line. You tell me that the Smith, 36,000 francs, and then the imposed lockdown on certain places you are not supposed to go. How are you going to survive? I just thank God that God is so powerful, Mr. Venatius. Otherwise, a majority of Cameroonians will have gone down 6 feet because of this pandemic. Because if you see, you go to some places, Mr. Venatius, somebody who depended on what? A small job that is being paid 50,000 francs. You are laid off, because we know it, the educational sector, the industrial sector, because we are not strong in the industrial department. We are not strong. So you are laid off. You have no job. Who is going to take care of your children? Who is going to take care? We can say that it is not like refraining the question, Mr. Venatius. It is an economic blessing to some politicians. Because
politicians?
Yes, to some politicians who embezzled the COVID-19 funds that came in for this particular purpose.
Yes.
Because money came in. Cameroonians raised about...
But the money coming in, you are touching a point, the loans that Cameroon had to get from
It's
IMF.
a cost. It's a cost.
Not a blessing.
Not a blessing, because our children will pay those loans.
Some were loans, some were grants.
Some were loans and some were grants.
Yes.
But the loans are with the grant. And in the loan, our great-grandchildren, they will pay this debt, even if we will not more be there. They will pay it. Whereas they don't know what you can even, we have started paying it. The cost of things in the market is very high. We pay it through indirect taxes and all the rest. So this issue of COVID-19 is a curse to the Cameroonian economy. It greatly reduced the rate of economic growth and development. Yes, because one, Cameroon is an agricultural economy. We are a third world country. The agricultural product could not leave Cameroon because of what? Lockdown. I just quoted an example of tomatoes. Gari, that used to go in Equatorial Guinea. It was only consumed locally. And what we consume from other industrialized countries, we could not have it. Why? Because of lockdown and because of what? Rapid increase in prices. So it was a curse to Cameroonian economy.
Okay, let us take the views of Mr. Kum. Mr. Kum, you have listened to Mr. Akum. You have listened to the explanation of Mr. Kum, who thinks that economically speaking, COVID-19 was more of a curse than a blessing.
Yes, I will not deny with what he is saying. I will accept that it is a broad misery. But as I keep saying, I will just pick one aspect in what he was trying to explain and analyze an economic aspect. He talked of the issue of COVID-19 bringing unemployment to Cameroonians, the prices of most
Basic commodities.
basic agricultural exports in Cameroon, they dropped. That is also a blessing.
Okay, when the
Yes.
When the prices
dropped, it's a blessing. I would tell you that normally in Cameroon, we are supposed to buy a basket of tomato at 1,000 francs because that is the natural endowments that God has blessed Cameroon with. Food. Food in Cameroon is supposed to be the cheapest item in the market. But now, due to the influence of trade, international trade and the others, with the advent of COVID-19, it gave an eye-opener to certain investors to understand that we also have a market in Cameroon. We have a domestic market. All those tomatoes, all those onions that were exported to Equatorial Guinea, to Nigeria, we consume them here. But now what it created was that it created surplus that reduced our prices. And that is the more reason why I would say that it's a blessing, because if you look at the statistics from the National Institute of Statistics, it shows that in 2020, the economic growth rate of Cameroon reduced by 3%. But the price rate, there was no inflation, because normally it was supposed to be accompanied by inflation. So we understand that our economy is stable. There's a drop in growth and there's a drop in the rate of inflation, which makes the economy more stable. If there would have been a situation where we experienced hike in prices of basic commodities as a result of COVID-19, then I would say that it would have been a catastrophic situation. But with what we have presently now,
without interrupting you, without interrupting you, when you talk of tomatoes being sold for 1,000 francs, look at the cost
of production.
Cost of production. How much does it cost to produce a basket of tomatoes? It's not less than 4,000.
Yeah, let me just.
If you go into
let me just explain to you that. Do you know that the Ministry of Agriculture provides certain opportunities, giving seedlings to farmers through their various schemes with respect to the subsistence farming and the small and medium-sized farming? With that assistance from the government, we expect that prices of these agricultural products that are consumed domestically should be sold at moderate price. But I'll tell you, it is the influence of external trade that makes the price of our basic commodity to increase. Because you cannot tell me that selling a basket of tomato at 8,000 francs, and the grade we even consume is the last grade. The best grades are sent out of
exported. Yeah.
So you understand that the issue is not the cost, but the issue is we produce uniquely to sell. So it gives an opportunity for Cameroonians to exploit their own natural endowments. And I would just add to what, in that same line, do you know that many Cameroonians today believe in traditional medicines, what the herbs and the likes? We saw
we know there was this locally made by Archbishop Samuel
Cleda and the rest, and other local product. What do you say?
Now with that, all those traditional medications, we realize that they played a very big role,
and they are still being consumed now.
And this tells us that COVID-19 has brought that idea of reliance to our own products. It has made Cameroonians to believe in themselves. So it has created that awareness to us.
I'm not denying your fact.
All right. Yeah, before we take question 2, please.
Okay.
Yes, go ahead.
I'm not denying your fact, right? Before the outbreak of COVID-19, traditional medicine had its roots, sanitation and the rest. We had Izaka before the far outbreak of COVID-19 for hygiene and sanitation. And don't forget that we had other tropical diseases that were handled uniquely traditionally without the help of the modern medicine. And what we must know is that COVID-19, which to some people is still a scheme, has brought birth misery. There are a lot of diseases. Mr. Vinicius, if you take malaria, if you take cholera, if you take
even the cancers,
cancer,
high blood, all this.
hunger. No, hunger, it kills more than that. But people pay less attention to it. And where does hunger come from? It comes from lack of food. And as you said, the prices of this, our strength is the agricultural sector. We are in the developing world. And if we sell our own products at very cheap and local prices, we will not have the economic power to compete.
Okay, Mr. Kum, let us go to question 2 for want of time. And we have tried to find out, given the state at which we are there potential to relaunch that economy after the COVID-19, post this COVID-19 period?
Yes, Mr. Vinicius, I will say yes.
Let us have some of them.
Some of the potentials. Before I go to them, I believe in this lady, necessity is the mother of invention. That is Esther Boserop. In every situation where you find yourself, you must always look for a way out. One, the COVID-19 period, in order to relaunch it, I think that the digital economy will be like of an advantage to Cameroonians. Working online and doing online businesses, training entrepreneurs and distance studies has actually, improve and encourage Cameroonians and given them another view of things. So I believe that Cameroonians, we have the human resources, material resources, that if well harnessed, it can bring back this economy even 10 times what it is today. And I must tell you, what the problem we have in Cameroon is not even the potentials, because we have the highest skilled workers, unskilled workers, both locally and internationally. Our problem is leadership and entrepreneurship, which is not giving it place. So answering that question, we have the potentials, but if they are well harnessed, properly used and applied, we can relaunch this economy in less than 2 years. If we just make a call that Cameroonian entrepreneurs who are abroad and at home, they should be given the green light to bring about a revival of this economy, Mr. Vinicius, it is possible, because we have engineers in all domains. Agriculture, medicine, economics, education, and the rest. And I believe that with all of these people put together and a good leadership, which Cameroon is far from having it, we will be able to relaunch the economy.
Let us take the views of Mr. Akum. You are of the same opinion that we are capable of relaunching the economy post-COVID-19 period?
Yes, Cameroon is capable, because we have, I will go in line with him, we have what it takes. And the recommendations I can give on that is that the economy of Cameroon should first of all create a policy with respect to contingency, a plan B, because this is what helped most of the industrialized countries. So the economy, the stakeholders, the parliamentarians, the lawmakers, they should develop a policy in which should prepare for situations like this. If this pandemic should come, what should the economy do? We should not rely on loans. We should not rely on debt relief funds. So they should bring up policies that will cater for periods of pandemics. It should be in place of the economic policies that they develop. Then the country, as of now, should relaunch certain sectors. Those sectors that were heavily touched, the government should come in and assist the sectors. For example, the industrial sector, education. I think the government should come in, digitalization of the educational system.
Yes.
The government should assist that sector should also assist in assisting the entrepreneurs to improve on it. And also, lastly, the government should encourage remittance. Remittance are funds from abroad. We should encourage to create a framework like what Nigeria just did. You create a framework where money sent back home can reduce the tax on the amount on the money sent back home, so that you encourage an inflow of capital into the economy.
Okay, Mr. Akum, before we round up, we are talking about all this that has to, like Mr. Akum was saying, it has to go with some management, tidying up, their procedures as well. If you have to talk about management issues in Cameroon, there's this concept of corruption that has always been part and parcel of us. What do we do with corruption that is there, and relaunching the economy? Would they not have an impact?
Really, that issue of corruption in Cameroon, I think, it's a problem. It's a generational problem that has to begin from nursery school. The educational approach towards corruption,
our mentality about common good
needs to change right from nursery school, because it's a generational problem. As the generation come, they copy from the old, and
it remains with us.
It remains within us.
Mr. Kum, before we round up, we are rounding up. We are talking about this corruption. How do you think that he's proposing, a change of mentality? Yes. From your own point of view, how do we handle corruption so that we should be able to launch economy where everybody looks at the same direction, the growth of the country?
Corruption in this country can be handled efficiently if the authorities actually admit their weaknesses, their incapability to do certain things. And then leaders who are competent should be put in the right positions. Religious leaders. Cameroon is either a Muslim or a Christian country. If these people who fear God are put into this position, I think corruption will be reduced to the maximum. According to me, priests, pastors, bishops, imams, sheikhs, they should be made leaders of this supreme state audit and control. Because to me, that's one of the most corrupt sector. They come to audit you, control you, but as you give them their envelope,
they sign what you want.
Everything is silent, and we will only hear that person is in.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Akum. Thank you, Mr. Akum, for being there to talk about this issue of economic in our country. And with the COVID-19 pandemic, I take the same view Mr. Akum is talking. That was the same view one of our panelists equally raised here from Germany, that Christians should go into the management of the affairs of this country. That brings us to the end of today's edition of Viewpoint. Tomorrow will be another day with another interesting topic. Up next is the news in the English language with Cynthia Nguemo. Until we meet again, have a blessed evening and goodbye.